Good morning, and thank you for coming. My name is Michael Cohn, and I'm the president of the National Whistleblower Center. The National Whistleblower Center was founded some 25 years ago to advocate for whistleblowers and to secure meaningful whistleblower protection. Today, the NWC will announce the IRS determination on Bradley Birkenfeld's application for a whistleblower reward. Seated to my immediate left is Dean Zerbe, co-counsel to Brad Birkenfeld. Seated next to Dean is Stephen Cohn, the executive director of the National Whistleblower Center, and who is likewise co-counsel to Brad Birkenfeld. Seated to my far right is David Colapinto. David is the general counsel of the National Whistleblower Center and is likewise co-counsel to Mr. Birkenfeld. And seated directly to my right is Douglas Birkenfeld, Brad's brother. We are saddened that Brad cannot be here with us today because of the current limitations on his release. We are hoping that Brad will soon be able to tell his own story in his own words. His brother Doug will fill in by reading a statement on Brad's behalf. I also want to introduce and point out Lindsay Williams, who's in the back of the room. Lindsay is the Director of Advocacy and can help you with press conference and other information following the press conference. There will be 3 brief statements made, after which I will invite questions from the floor. Please remember to hold all questions until all 3 speakers have finished making their brief opening statements, and wait until I open the floor for questioning. First will be Dean Zerbe. Dean served as senior counsel and tax counsel for the Senate Finance Committee, working for Chairman Grassley. Dean is responsible for the creation of the IRS Whistleblower Office at the direction of Senator Grassley. Since 2009, Dean has served as Brad Birkenfeld's co-counsel along with Steve and Dave. Dean?
Today is a great day for whistleblowers. Today is a great day for all the honest Americans out there who work their job, pay their taxes. Today is a great day for tax fairness. Today is a terrible day for big-time tax cheats. Why do I say that? Because today is a day we are very pleased to announce that Brad Birkenfeld, the most important tax whistleblower in the history of the country, has received a major award of $104 million from the IRS under the IRS Whistleblower Program. This award by the IRS is being made thanks to the information provided by Brad that led to over $5 billion and counting in tax payments being made by big banks and wealthy individuals who tried to evade paying their fair share of taxes. These $5 billion in payments were all made thanks to Brad's willingness to stand up on behalf of honest taxpayers. I cannot improve upon the IRS's own words in making this award decision. That Brad's information was unprecedented, that Brad provided information that was exceptional and comprehensive in both breadth and depth, and that Brad's information served as the basis for unprecedented actions against the Swiss bank UBS and collateral impact on other enforcement activities. As important, with today's decision by the IRS to provide an award to Brad, the IRS Whistleblower Program is finally on track, with the IRS recognizing the value and worth of whistleblowers and the need to award and encourage more whistleblowers to come forward. With $5 billion collected so far, the award to Brad is less than 2 cents on the dollar for every dollar collected by the Treasury. This probably represents the greatest return of investment for the U.S. government in its history. While we are in the political season, it is useful to pause for a moment and recognize that the success of the IRS Whistleblower Program in today's award truly represents a bipartisan victory of which both parties can be proud. The IRS whistleblower law was put forward and written into the statutes thanks foremost to the drive and direction of Senator Grassley. However, the IRS whistleblower law stands on the shoulders of the earlier False Claims Act that Senator Grassley and Congressman Howard Berman put into law in 1986. Senator Grassley, in moving the whistleblower law, benefited enormously from the good support of Chairman Baucus, who has been a champion of going after the tax gap. The oversight of Senators Levin and Collins on illegal offshore banking was vital in ensuring that this issue got the proper attention from the IRS. The IRS whistleblower law was established under President Bush by IRS Commissioner Mark Everson. Today's actions by President Obama's administration and Commissioner Schulman build on that earlier work and takes the IRS whistleblower program to the next level. Both parties can take a bow for this good news and the billions of dollars being brought in from illegal offshore accounts. I would like to thank Commissioner Schulman for his championing of the IRS efforts on illegal offshore accounts, and with today's award acknowledging that it all started thanks to a whistleblower. I'd especially like to thank Deputy IRS Commissioner Steve Miller, who has been tireless and prodding, pushing, and pulling the IRS to move forward on the whistleblower program. There's been a need. Words fail me to thank sufficiently the dedicated staff at the IRS Whistleblower Office, ably led by Steve Whitlock and his capable deputy, Bob Gardner. I especially want to thank Don Applebaum of the Whistleblower Office, who has held hands during a long and arduous process. Ms. Applebaum's work, patience, and dedication, as well as her constant graciousness, is a reminder that our nation benefits enormously from career employees at the IRS who are engaged, knowledgeable, and committed to ensuring our tax laws are followed. I also want to credit the IRS employees who used the information provided by Brad to go after the Swiss banks and the illegal offshore accounts, David Reeves and John McDougall. I want to recognize, and I hope the IRS will recognize their valuable work, and also that they were willing to work with a whistleblower and the information provided by a whistleblower. The simple reality is, in this modern world with sophisticated tax planning, the IRS has to look to whistleblowers to assist them in their work if they are going to be fully successful. Finally, let me thank my co-counsels, Steve Cohn, David Calapinto. It has been tremendous to work with them with their years of experience with whistleblowers. And of course, to thank Brad for his courage of coming forward voluntarily in the first place and making this all possible. An unprecedented 3 amnesties, thousands of people coming forward for the first time to admit that they've had illegal offshore accounts, and now dozens of banks working cooperatively with the U.S. government, and $5 billion and counting brought in. Let me close and say that today's award strikes an enormous blow for tax fairness. The IRS whistleblower law is targeted specifically to encourage individuals to come forward and speak out about tax cheating by the big corporations, big banks, and the wealthiest individuals in this country who are evading tax. It is not your regular worker who gets his biweekly paycheck with all of his taxes already withheld that is engaging in sophisticated tax shelters and illegal offshore accounts. As Brad has shown, encouraging knowledgeable insiders to stick their necks out is often the only way to ever be able to find out about tax cheating by the fat cats. Finally, a robust IRS whistleblower program will do much to help the vast majority of honest taxpayers, especially small and medium business owners. A successful IRS whistleblower program will mean that the IRS can dedicate limited IRS resources on going after the big-time tax cheats and leave the honest business owners and working families alone. Today is a great day for the American taxpayer. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dean. Our next speaker is attorney Stephen Cohn. Stephen has represented whistleblowers for over 30 years. He's the foremost expert on whistleblower law in the United States. He is also the executive director of the National Whistleblower Center and the author of 7 books on whistleblowing. Steve has represented Mr. Birkenfeld along with Dean and Dave since 2009. Let me introduce to you Stephen Cohn, who is also my brother.
Good morning, and thank you for coming. Today, the IRS sent 104 million messages to employees throughout the world. There is an effective way to blow the whistle. There is a way to report tax fraud. And we are paying awards and following the law. Today, the IRS sent 104 million messages to banks throughout the world. Stop enabling the tax cheats. Stop committing money laundering, and you will be caught. And finally today, the IRS sent, I hope not 104 million messages, I hope there are less, but they sent a message to every American taxpayer who still has an illegal offshore account. Turn yourself in now. There still is an amnesty program. Turn yourself in before your banker does. The $104 million paid to Mr. Birkenfeld is, to our calculation, the largest whistleblower award paid to a single individual. It is unquestionably the largest whistleblower award paid under the tax program. It recognizes Mr. Birkenfeld's incredible contributions to every American, to money put in the pocket of every American. $5 billion in fines, penalties, and back taxes already collected and still counting. A $780 million fine to UBS Bank already collected, and other banks are now under investigation. The whole Swiss banking system is under investigation and may get cracked, thanks to Mr. Birkenfeld and the processes he initiated. And what's even more incredible is that Mr. Birkenfeld's disclosures cracked the mythology of bank secrecy, because UBS was forced to turn over 4,900 names of people who had secret accounts. The Swiss government changed its tax treaty with the United States. So any American who thinks they can hide their money in offshore illegal accounts, and that these governments and banks, for their own private interest, won't turn your names in once they get on the hot seat, well, ask UBS. They turned in 4,900 names of their own clients. Today we thank Mr. Birkenfeld for blazing a trail of reporting large-scale fraud. And hopefully others can follow and will follow with less pain and suffering than he went through. In fact, we know there's a safe pathway now through the whistleblower office. And having worked with Mr. Birkenfeld in that office, we know it can be effective. Over these past 3 years, I've worked together and had the honor of working with Mr. Zerbe, my two law partners, Dave and Mike, and the incredibly dedicated staff of the National Whistleblower Center. Together, we worked to ensure that Mr. Birkenfeld's voice would be heard, regardless of the size of the bureaucracies, the power of the institutions. His voice of a whistleblower would be heard. We worked to ensure that the whistleblower law would be followed to the T, not in rhetoric, not in speeches, but in actuality. And we worked to ensure that his contributions would be fully recognized, not just for Mr. Birkenfeld, but for every other whistleblower or employee who has to take that risk of stepping forward. And not just for the whistleblowers, but for every American who works hard, pays their taxes, and expects tax fairness in this country. To ensure that these laws will be effectively administered and worked, the National Whistleblower Center is undergoing today and initiating a worldwide educational program to ensure that employees at banks throughout the world know what their rights are and understand the safe avenues that are presented to them. Together, we can change illegal offshore banking practices. We can stop those practices that create a safe haven for tax cheats, and even worse, those who seek to hide their illegally gained monies. Finally, I would like to thank the thousands of U.S. citizens who took time to email and write their congressman, to President Obama, to the IRS, and demand justice for Bradley Birkenfeld. Your voices were heard. Justice was done. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Doug Birkenfeld is an attorney in Boston, Massachusetts. He steadfastly supported his brother during the bleakest of times. He provided Brad with key moral and strategic support over many years and continues to do so to this day. Doug?
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Douglas Birkenfeld. I am proud to say that I am the brother of Bradley Birkenfeld, the UBS whistleblower. Due to the terms of his release, Brad could not be here today. However, as his brother, I am quite certain what his thoughts are today, and I am now looking forward to sharing those thoughts with you. This is a day that I thought would never come. This is a monumental day not only for me, but for every whistleblower worldwide. It is truly gratifying to be recognized for my historic efforts as the very first Swiss private banker to reveal to the outside world the inside secrets behind the illegal practices of UBS and countless other Swiss private banks. I single-handedly transformed centuries of illicit Swiss banking practices, but I paid a huge price for being the only person to have the courage to come forward. My efforts have exposed the trillion-dollar world of secret offshore banking that has enabled and encouraged intelligence agencies, corrupt politicians, drug cartels, arms dealers, tax cheats, and terrorist groups to operate their illegal activities and to thrive undetected. U.S. citizens can take great comfort that their government is finally pursuing the tax cheats that I exposed. I am most grateful for this monetary award from the IRS Whistleblower Office and for the recognition of my historic efforts and unprecedented sacrifices. As a direct result of the vast documented information I provided and my ongoing assistance with U.S. government authorities, thousands of illegal account holders have paid fines, penalties, and interest in excess of $5 billion, which, absent my efforts, would remain undetected as of today. Additionally, due directly to my actions, new tax treaties, enforcement laws, bank settlements, and 3 amnesty programs have been instituted that will generate billions of dollars more in recovered assets for the American taxpayers. American taxpayers are not the only ones disadvantaged as a result of these illegal schemes. This corruption and secrecy diverts money from well-intentioned government and institutional programs funding humanitarian projects across developing countries. Siphoning monies from these projects and hiding them in clandestine offshore accounts deprives millions of poor, sick, and underprivileged people of the intended benefits of these projects. While I commend the IRS for being responsive to my urgent concerns and the invaluable information I voluntarily provided, this is just a beginning, as there is much more waste, fraud, and corruption to expose. With this award and recognition, I have renewed faith in the efforts of the IRS and the Whistleblower Office. I realize that none of my former colleagues at UBS, no one in Switzerland, and certainly no one in the international banking community ever thought I would be publicly praised as a true American hero and rightfully rewarded under the law for all the efforts to blow the whistle on illegal offshore banking. I knew that blowing the whistle would end my career in Switzerland, but I did not expect I would be risking my very freedom in my home country. Today, the IRS has spoken loud and clear that the whistleblower program not only works, but it is highly successful in achieving unprecedented results for the American people. I would strongly encourage other whistleblowers to come forward and to do the right thing. I will dedicate my time and resources to helping other whistleblowers worldwide in this very important civic duty. I encourage those in the banking industry who want to come forward to contact me through the National Whistleblower Center. My success is also due to outstanding and relentless efforts of my attorneys, Dean Zerbe, Steve Cohn, David Colapinto. Without their expert counsel, diligent research, and professional skills, this day never would have happened. Special thanks also to the staff of the National Whistleblower Center, whose hard work and support made all of this possible. I sincerely want to thank my family and friends who stood by me during this difficult period. I am blessed for their unwavering love and support. I would also like to thank the thousands of supporters, both domestically and internationally, who have aggressively appealed to the Obama administration to rectify this gross injustice leveled against me by the Department of Justice. Future financial whistleblowers deserve infinitely better treatment than I received. They deserve to be praised and protected, not prosecuted. Finally, I wish to deliver a very special word of appreciation to Senator Charles Grassley, who is the quintessential advocate for all whistleblowers. Every American should take a moment to praise Senator Grassley, who not only authored the 2006 whistleblower law, but was instrumental in ensuring oversight and compliance with its proper implementation. We all have Senator Grassley to thank for his dedicated commitment to public service. In closing, on a personal note, I am truly grateful for this award and the recognition of my historic efforts. While those funds will help me go forward with my life, I also recognize that there are many people in this country who are much less fortunate. My desire is to identify several humanitarian ways to give back in a meaningful and productive fashion. One way in particular would be to help the countless patients of the Shriners Hospital for Children in Boston, Massachusetts, where I was a burn patient over 35 years ago. There is so much more to be done. Thank you for your continued support, and keep up the fight. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. And when you get back to Boston, please give Brad a big hug from the National Whistleblower Center for our grateful appreciation for what he has done for this nation. Whistleblowing is what the National Whistleblower Center is about, and Brad is what whistleblowing is about. I will now open the floor for questions for 10 to 15 minutes. Okay, oh, here's a microphone, okay.
Hi, good morning. Patrick Temple West with Reuters News. How did you guys reach the 104 figure? Can you give a breakdown on how much of that was from UBS taxes collected versus fines and penalties?
This award is based on the monies paid by UBS directly. We did not. They issued an initial determination. We filed no appeal. We accepted the judgment of the IRS whistleblower office as was. Thank you.
There's a microphone for you.
So the $5 billion that's referred to here, that's more of a sort of a statement rather than a mathematical reality, because the reward on $5 billion would be 2%. So just wanted to kind of clear that up.
The way to understand whistleblowing and this award is that there are levels of savings for the U.S. taxpayer. The most obvious one is if a company has to pay a direct fine or a penalty, so it's easy to understand. The second one in this particular case comes from the amnesties that were given, 3 amnesties. So on the face of Birkenfeld's whistleblowing, tax cheats were given an opportunity to turn themselves in, especially UBS clients. So that's the process that happens. In any case, Mr. Birkenfeld would have the opportunity to go to tax court and contest the nature and scope of any award. The law says you have the right to 30% of all collected proceeds, and you have a right to go to court to enforce it. As I say, Mr. Birkenfeld is a quintessential whistleblower. He read what the IRS did, how the IRS whistleblower office adjudicated his claim, and he did not appeal. That does not mean that he's not entitled to additional monies, but what it does mean is that he accepted the judgment of the whistleblower office, as you can see in the unredacted version that was provided.
So to follow up on that, he is likely then to go back to court to claim further monies as time goes on?
No, I think maybe try to clarify it this way. There's a difference between what Mr. Birkenfeld has brought in. All dollars that are brought in are not also subject to the claims under the IRS whistleblower law. It's a subset of that. So no, there's no plans to go forward with the tax court in terms of that. This is the settlement amount in terms of potentially, and I think it's widely agreed that the IRS admits it themselves and states it, that the collateral accomplishments of not only the $780 million, but the billions that have come in have all been directly due to his efforts and the amnesty. In terms of any funds down the road, that's a very small bird in a bush very far away. But this is what today is about.
Did the IRS say anything about the fact that as Mr. Birkenfeld has broken laws himself during the process, did that detract from the overall sum? Did that have any influence on the reward?
I think this is one of the most important things, and really for everyone listening out there that's aware of this, the IRS law follows the False Claims Act, and the concept of there is what we call planned and initiated. If you've planned and initiated, if you're the Madoff of the world, the chief architect, the chief wrongdoer, then yes, the law would provide that there would be a limitation on the funds. But the law recognizes that you need insiders with that knowledge on the inside of what's going on to come forward. That's just a basic 101 of the law. You don't have Mother Teresa and the Boy Scouts planning these things. You don't have them in the room and then leaving the room after they're planned. You need to have people that are there. The great line, Steve, I guess, is it takes a rogue to catch a rogue in terms of it. So the IRS, to their credit, recognize that if they want to get good inside information, if they want to encourage people who know what's really going on, they've got to recognize that, and you can't be cutting back someone's award because of that. So I think basically, no, there was no reduction, nor should there be under the law in terms of his activities, because you've got to have people with that inside knowledge to come forward. It's not a choir practice when you're doing tax fraud.
I just want to add to that. I think for every banking employee out there, for every whistleblower who is thinking of stepping forward or using any of the reward laws that are now available, not just in tax, but also for securities fraud, commodities fraud, contracting fraud. If you are a participant, you are eligible, because the laws cannot work unless participants step forward. So that was the big issue in the Birkenfeld case. I think at the beginning there was confusion over your rights as a participant versus what to do with someone who is the kingpin, who is the chief architect, who is the Madoff. And I believe at the beginning of his case there was confusion over that. We hope and expect that with this award and the way the IRS has adjudicated this, that will never happen again, and participants will be fully protected.
In the back row? Question for Doug Birkenfeld, if I could. On a personal level, give us a sense of, after he pays the IRS and he pays his attorneys, how much money will Brad take home? And then as somebody who's still on probation and just out of jail, how's this going to change his life? I mean, what does he do from here on out?
Well, first of all, what his personal financial situation is, that's a private matter for him at this point. Beyond that, your legal questions along those lines, I would defer to very capable counsel. My brother has very good attorneys here at this table, and I would defer to them on those legal questions that you posed.
Well, just to follow up, then, if you could give us a sense of, what happens in his life going forward. What's he going to do now?
Okay.
He's not going to go back.
Well, I can't tell the future any more than anybody else can, so we'll see.
Yeah, just
Thanks.
to clarify, Mr. Birkenfeld was released from incarceration. He's in home confinement. He's at his house, but the terms and conditions of his release for the next 3 years will be controlled by the U.S. government. We are actively seeking a pardon, a full presidential pardon. We believe that's correct. We think that when anyone in the government goes back and looks at what happened from when he first stepped forward in 2007 all the way till today, they'll see that there was some terrible mistakes made early on, some misunderstandings about the law, mistakes that set the whistleblower program back, that scared other bankers from coming forward, and that what's so historic about what happened today and what the IRS office did was they went back and they understood the law, and they had, within our government, the courage to follow the law and return it to its roots. So Mr. Birkenfeld, over the next couple of years, will be picking up his pieces, but we hope that the Justice Department and the President follow through, review what they had done, follow the law, and understand that Birkenfeld did the right thing and he should obtain a full pardon. Thanks.
Can you elaborate on the back and forth with IRS on this, or just a little bit of the backstory on how this all came about?
Right. I think the main issues with the IRS, Steve alluded to, and you saw it a bit in tax notes the other day. I think for the service, they were very diligent. Obviously, they recognized, as Steve said, the magnitude of this award. They wanted to get it right. They wanted to follow the law right. It was a new world for them, and so a lot of folks, given the dollars involved, given how much Brad's been recognized as the leading IRS whistleblower case, and the magnitude of what he's done, that they had a lot of cooks in the kitchen in it, and we had to have a lot of discussions and robust discussions about different issues. Planned and initiated was certainly one of them. Collected proceeds, a host of different issues were things that we had to I think, talk back and forth with, and I think they also internally had to talk a great deal about what they wanted to do and how they wanted to proceed in terms of it. So I think in some ways it was understandable, while frustrating perhaps for us, that it took the path it did. But I think, Steve, you said it well, that in a lot of ways this case is groundbreaking for so many other whistleblowers going forward, because we did have to resolve these issues. So it was a good discussion. Like I said, I think we had a fair handling with the IRS whistleblower office, and feel very good. It's not a walk in the park. Obviously, we both get a lot of calls from folks who have a bad day with the IRS whistleblower office. It's not easy. It's not an easy path. There's no question about that. But I think I found it to be a fair path in terms of. But Steve, do you want to add anything to that?
Just briefly, I think to reemphasize this point, there were numerous issues in Mr. Birkenfeld's case, and it was obvious that at the beginning of it, things didn't go well, and in fact, went terribly. But the key issue was to have the IRS understand what a participant is versus a kingpin, and to understand that for the whistleblower law to work, you must protect participants even if they engaged in criminal activity. Because to get the big fish, to get into the conspiracy itself, you have to induce someone who's there at the table. The low-level person down the street isn't going to know. So this was a process, because I think in many government agencies, and we also dealt with this with the Securities and Exchange Commission, the initial reaction is, my God, you were a participant, you
You're part of the
broke the
problem.
law, you're part of the problem. But we went back to 1863 to the False Claims Act as signed and advocated by President Abraham Lincoln. This is where this goes to. President Lincoln was an advocate of it. His Republican senators and congressmen pushed it, and they went before the American people in 1863 and said, if you want to catch the fraudsters, you have to put out a temptation. And the exact quote in the U.S. Senate was, it takes a rogue to catch a rogue. You have to get someone on the inside and induce them to step out. That was the major hill to get over. But the IRS gets it, and they say they get it in 104 million different ways. They understand if they're going to use bankers to crack illegal offshore banking, they've got to understand that many of these bankers have have facilitated illegal accounts. And they have to open their door to them and protect them and encourage them. And that's the importance of what happened today, and that's the real significance of what the IRS has done.
I think, Steve, you said it right. I think it was the cultural issue, and that's true of any agency. It's not just the IRS. Some get it quicker, some get it slower. But I think it was culturally the IRS getting their mind wrapped around, we want to encourage these whistleblowers. We want them to come forward. Yes, they're not perfect. And I think, right to your point, Steve, it's understanding. And I think for everyone to understand out there, and really for the whistleblowers, this isn't a walk in the park. This is a step into the void for a whistleblower, and particularly for high-end whistleblowers. You are talking about people that have a good salary, they have a good retirement, they have stocks, bonds. You get it. Life's going pretty well for these well-placed folks in these high-priced banks. You can imagine them going back to their spouse and saying, I'd like to take it all on a flyer and just try to see if I can't do it. You've got to provide them an opportunity in terms of an award coming forward. So I think the IRS got it, but really going back to your question, I think it culturally took them a while. I think, Brad obviously served as the groundbreaker, the path breaker on this, and I think it's going to be an easier path going forward for all whistleblowers is our hope at the IRS.
We'll take two more questions. Before that, I'd just like to thank Dean and Stephen for being able to educate this government and set this law on the right path. Without their able-bodied efforts, we would be far, far in a different place today.
I just want to ask Doug, statement you read, is that an actual statement from your brother?
That is a statement first of all, that is a statement
That is a statement consistent with his release.
with his thoughts.
I just want to state for the record that is not a statement by Bradley Birkenfeld. That is his brother's statement after having worked and struggled with him and suffered with him and visiting with him and standing by his side for years in very, very troubled times. I think Doug has a very good sense of what Brad thinks, how he feels, and he's put that to words.
I think it's fair to say that it mirrors his thoughts.
Sorry, but just on the timing, can you just give us any dates about how long it took from when IRS first approached you to how we got here today?
A long time.
When we got on the case in 2009, it was not in a good place, and we've been working on it very, very hard since September 2009 to fix it. And luckily, I think, and for every American taxpayer, we were able to do that. But we got on the case in September 2009.
All right, this ends our press conference. Thank you all very much for attending. If you would like to talk to Steve, Dave, or Dean, they'll be available after the press conference. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's right, I know.